What is going on, guys? It has been a couple weeks since we have posted on here. I was traveling to New York. I was at Syracuse's spring game. I was in New York City, kind of been bopping around. I'm actually heading back to New York City for a little bit. So exciting times, a lot going on. But I wanted to make sure we kept up to date. We did a couch giveaway. We had a winner, which I'm going to drop right here below. So we're following up on what we said here at the Network Show. We are trying to make the world of NFL football fans, specifically my New York Giants fans, a better place. We got another episode. Check it out. My boy AQ Shipley. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll keep these shows pumping. We are back with another episode of Net Worth. I am your host, Justin Pugh, brought to you by the Athlete Podcast Network. Before we get started, do me a favor. Smash that like button, subscribe, do all the things you want to do. We got a great week ahead of us. Let me introduce today's guest. He's a former NFL offensive lineman. He played for over a decade. My member golf partner. We've lost twice the trophy, but we always come home with the money. He's a Penn State legend. He won the Remington, the nation's top center. He capped off his NFL career by winning a Super Bowl. He's transitioned seamlessly into a media career as a regular commentator and an analyst on the Pat McAfee Show. He's also done hockey talk. He's had his own podcast. If anyone knows the business of pro football, it is this guy. Player, coach, media, trainer. Joining me as one of my best friends in the NFL, AQ Shipley. AQ, thanks for coming on, brother.
What's up, man? This was awesome. You nailed the intro.
Yeah, I'm trying not to. I'm just trying to take some notes. You told me to bring the personality, and we'll get down to that later on in the show. Tips for guys getting into this business. But man, I knew you'd be on at some point. You're tough to nail down. You have maybe the best gig in all of. In the entire world, maybe. I mean, it's been crazy. But before we get into that, I got to give a shout out to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Moon Township. You almost didn't even make it here. You were supposed to be a basketball star growing up. Like, how did you go from? Look at DJ Burns out there. Do you think he needs to make the same adjustment? Like, hey, go be a left tackle in the NFL.
I was saying that yesterday. When you see him, he's awesome, right? He's like, they list him at whatever 6'9", 6'10". There's no way he's that. He's 6'6", 6'7". He's a perfect left tackle, right? If he can figure out the sport. But it's a wild ride to watch him just kind of take over this NCAA tournament, and you love it. I mean, you see him talking to the crowd. I mean, his dad's getting into it. It was really cool. But for me, basketball was so big for me growing up because I was always big. I was this tall in sixth grade. I thought I was going to be 6'9", 6'10", and somehow stopped at 6'1" and just never kept growing. But
what the fuck, God?
What happened? And, so for me, playing basketball was so big because I was always the tallest. Well, then everybody obviously caught up to me and then surpassed me. But at the time, it was like basketball was where I was going. And ultimately, whenever football became the number one, basketball was so instrumental in footwork and, short quickness, basically everything we do as an offensive lineman, right? Everything's in a phone booth. It's short bursts. It's all the quick stuff. And I think I attribute a lot of that stuff to me playing basketball at a younger age.
Now, you also didn't even get recruited as an offensive lineman. It seems like you just fought the good fight the entire way. It's like, all right, I'm going to go play basketball. I'm going to get a Division I scholarship for basketball. Didn't you guys win a state championship?
We did.
And
Played your way. Holy Ghost Prep out of Salem, Pennsylvania.
My nephew's playing a little ice hockey there right now. So, a little bittersweet moment for me. But then you get recruited to Penn State as a defensive lineman. How did that transition go? It was like basketball to D-line where there's still a little bit of glory, to offensive line where there's no glory whatsoever.
If I could have been stubborn, I would have just hung on to the defensive line thing. Because even early in my career, I go to Penn State as a defensive lineman. I got recruited. I had 50-something offers, and all but 3 of them were to play nose guard. And so, I thought that was the ticket. And I show up in training camp, for my freshman year at Penn State, and I'm having a great camp. I'm making plays. I'm splitting double teams. I'm doing everything. I'm like, oh, here we go. Now I had
you were a try hard. You were a try hard white guy, or was there?
I was the epitome of a try hard white guy, right? I was just
the guy we hated going against.
You were guys. That's exactly right. And but I had some quickness, like I said, and I even freshman year, I had 3 sacks in college, like legit in Division I football. I had 3 sacks, and everybody looks at me now. They're like, get the fuck out of here. You didn't have 3 sacks. But no, it did. And then it was going into my 3rd year. So I was a redshirt freshman. So going in to be a redshirt sophomore, Paterno called me in, and he was like, all right, we got an open spot. We got to move you over. I was like, I remember calling my dad. I'm like, Dad, I want to transfer. I got to get the hell out of here. Like, I'm a nose guard. I am a nose guard. He was like, just give it a try. And the rest was history. I mean, it just kind of, first year was pretty good. I mean, it wasn't great. I mean, it was probably, I don't know, maybe honorable mention All Big Ten. But then the next 2 years, first team All Big Ten, first team All Big Ten. And then, capped it off senior year, first team All American, Remington Trophy, and kind of Big Ten Offensive Lineman of the Year. I mean, I had a great run my senior year,
which is absolutely incredible. I mean, and I will say this, and we always go back and forth, but any sport that we play, whether we're shooting hoops, hitting a golf ball, you just have this natural ability as an athlete. So I think that was one of those things where D-line, offensive line, wherever they were going to put you, you were going to make plays. So I guess in today's NIL, what do you think you were getting a year? Like 50 offers, you had all of them. I mean, you were getting at least $100,000 a year as a player, right?
In that school with that backing in that environment, I think, easily. I mean, the NIL could have. I think back to some of the guys I played with, and I fit the mold, right? Like I fit the perfect mold of the Penn State. I did things the right way. I was a good locker room guy. I was a good character guy. I got good grades. I went to class. I was a 6 a.m. lifting guy. I did everything kind of right. So I think from that standpoint, it would have been really good. But I mean, like I look back, like a Sean Lee, a Paul Posluszny. I mean, those guys could have rushed the NFL. I mean, Paul Posluszny was. If the president of the United States and Paul Posluszny walked down University Park in State College, Pennsylvania, they were going to Paul, right? Like that's how big he was when he was there. So it's like this NIL thing's crazy. They're gonna have to figure it out at some point. It's gonna have to kind of go this way before it kind of falls off and levels out. But I think we all could have capitalized quite a bit.
No, 100%. And I don't think there's any atmospheres quite like Penn State either. Obviously you got to play in Beaver Stadium, the whiteouts, some of the biggest games in Penn State history. Is there anywhere else that can compare to Penn State? Is Michigan, Ohio State? I know there's some electric environments, but when Penn State's rolling, is there anywhere else like it in college football?
I don't think so. And I mean, that was almost the number one reason why I chose there, right? So I went up there. It was 2003, Penn State, Nebraska, and like within the first, 6 minutes of the game, this guy, Alan Zamitis, legend, DB, played in the NFL for a little bit. He's awesome dude. Pick 6. First 6 minutes of the game, and this place just erupts. I'm there on a recruiting visit. I'm like, I'm coming here. Like, there's no question about it. I ultimately ended up visiting other schools. I looked at Michigan. I looked at Ohio State. I looked at Notre Dame, looked at some other schools, and it's like, even when you go, like Michigan has 110,000 fans, but it's like the way that stadium is built, it goes out. So the noise doesn't come down on top of you, right? Like we played in Seattle, that stadium's straight up and down. So that noise just comes right down. Ohio State's probably the closest to Penn State, in my opinion. But then there's like some other ones that are low key, like Iowa. Iowa gets crazy loud in the Big Ten, and those night games, the blackouts, and some of the different things they do. It's really cool. Wisconsin obviously has some really. I mean, the Big Ten has some great atmospheres, and that was a number one selling point, honestly, for me.
Well, I think a lot of schools can match with like the overall attendance. But Penn State, you mix in the partying plus the attendance, the amount of people, you put 100,000 plus into Beaver Stadium with the drinking involved. I don't think there's an atmosphere that can compare. I mean, there may be some other large crowds, but nothing as raucous as Penn State. I've been to a few parties there myself. I wish I was good enough to get recruited by Penn State at the time. I just missed out. What was the biggest game you played in while you were there? I know you played in some big ones.
Yeah. So, I mean, regular season games. I mean, there was a couple Penn State, Ohio State games that were 3 versus 5, 2 versus 6, whiteout night game. This is kind of basically who's going to win the Big Ten with this game. I think Michigan, we played Michigan one year. We were top 10. They were top 10. It was Chad Henne, Lamar Woodley, Brandon Graham. I mean, they had a bunch of guys, and then we were kind of loaded up too. And then Bowl games, my freshman year, Orange Bowl, we ended up winning. We beat Florida State in triple overtime. It was like a 3-5 game. And then senior year, lost to USC in the Rose Bowl. It was like a 3-5 game. So those are the big ones.
I think that's something that everyone like loses fact of. You get to the NFL and you start playing for money and it becomes a business. Those are some of the games that I look back that I had the most fun playing with your brothers. It's not a, at that time, guys weren't getting cut every day. The guys you came in with, you kind of saw through to the end. Was that the favorite part for you for playing in college football?
Yeah, college football, there's nothing like it. I mean, the atmosphere, the environment, and plus you have the school. You have not only do you have the school, it's all the alumni, and the alumni are spread throughout the country and the world, right? And everybody comes together on this Saturday, and you just don't feel it's corporate in the NFL. It's everybody's playing for money, everybody's playing for contracts. You're always looking over your shoulder and wondering what's if your coach is going to be there, if you're having a terrible, right? Like there's so much other factors that go into it, and I was talking about something the other day that I thought was pretty interesting is like everything is magnified of the importance once you get to the NFL, right? Like when you're playing with your brothers and it's just here, it's like, hey, let's go win this game. Yeah, of course it's important, right? But it's like, hey, we're gonna go play this game, right? And for you, right? Like you got to play against Aaron Donald in college, but I guarantee you, your coaches didn't build Aaron Donald up in college the way they do in the NFL, right? Like
I had no idea who he was in college.
That's exactly right. I was talking about it the other day. It was like we played Texas A&M and it was the 2007 Alamo Bowl, and their defensive line was Red Bryant, Michael Bennett, and a young Von Miller. And it's like, hey, we're just gonna go run the ball against these guys, and like you don't think twice about it. And then but I'm sitting here thinking, man, if this was an NFL game, we'd have to have a whole game plan for those three guys, And it's like, I think it's also a unique thing in college because like where you eventually end up growing and becoming, right, like is not yet realized at that point. So they don't build those people up so much, and it's a glorified high school just at a bigger level, right?
Well, I think your story personifies that too. Coming as a D lineman, transition over to center, you work your way up, All-American, Remington, and then you get drafted in 2009 by the hometown Steelers. What was that like going back? And I'm sure you grew up a Steelers fan, right? And then getting drafted by them?
Yeah, huge Steeler fan growing up. I mean, if you grow up in Pittsburgh and you're not a Steeler fan, they send you down the river, and it's so for me it was a dream come true. It was like that's where I wanted to be. Mike Webster was like the epitome of once I became a center, that's where I wanted to be. And then you got all the history of Pittsburgh centers with Mike Webster, Dermontti Dawson, and then Jeff Hardings before that when they won the Super Bowl. And I get there and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great. This is gonna be great. And it was the worst thing for me. I'm back home in a comfortable environment. I'm back home around my family. I can kind of lean on them. And I'm one of the guys that like I do best when I'm away from everything. Like when you put me in a dungeon and I have to focus on something, that's when I do best. And so for me, I'm getting pulled at by all my friends. Tell me what it's like. Hey, come meet us out. And it's like, it's a Tuesday and I got practice tomorrow. It's like, hey, meet us at Mario's on the South Side. All right, sounds good. I'll be there. Probably shouldn't have done that. And, you live and you learn. And then by the end of the year, I was like, I was on the practice squad the whole year. They wanted to re-sign me back. And I think a couple picks after Pittsburgh in the draft was Philadelphia. And they were going to take me at like, I think I drafted 226 to Pittsburgh. They were going to take me at like 230. And I was like, man, I got to get out of here. So I went to Philadelphia, and I loved the fact of Andy Reid and kind of everything they did. And then also, Juan Castillo was the O-line coach there, and he's kind of like a guru, for O-line guys whenever I was coming out. And so I was like, man, like, I think this would be really good for me. Go there. I can learn a lot. I got to get better at some things, and this would be good. And that's what I ultimately ended up doing.
Yeah, I think Andy Reid, you look back now, what he was able to do when he was in Philly and then now in Kansas City. I bet you the Eagles are wishing they never let him go to begin with, because that dude is just the best to ever do it. All right, so you get to this, you start out with the Steelers. What's it like walking into that locker room? Who was on that team? And it had to be a star-studded crew, right?
Oh, it was incredible. I mean, you think of the defense, right? The two bookends were James Harrison and Lamar Woodley. In the middle, you had Casey Hampton, who, if you don't know anything about Casey Hampton, just look him up. He's one of the best nose guards, biggest nose guards. I mean, he was just a space eater. He was incredible. You had Brett Kiesel, who played forever as a legend in Pittsburgh at the one defensive end. Then you had Aaron Smith, and most people don't realize this, Aaron Smith should be, if he's not even mentioned in the Hall of Fame, like he should be somebody that you look at as the prototype 3-4 defensive end. He was incredible. Linebackers, you had Larry Foote and James Ferrier, who both played 10, 12, 13, 14 years in the NFL, whatever it was. You had Ike Taylor and Willie Gay as the corners, Troy Polamalu and Ryan Clark as DBs. And so that's the defense you're going against. And I'm like, man, this is.
And you're on the practice squad at the time. So you're going against these guys every single day. That's got to be the most intimidating to go up there over the ball. And you're looking at Troy Polamalu like, you want me to block this guy right now?
And those guys practiced hard too. Like there was no, except for my man Big Ham. Casey Hams was the best, man. He'd come out there. He wanted to save his feet for Sundays, right? So he'd come out in like Jordans, no cleats on. He'd be like, "Hey, big fella, you know the drill today. We make it. We go, but we don't go. You know what I'm saying?" And I'm like, "Oh man, how am I supposed to climb my way out of practice squad, right?" But then we'd get to the nickel package on third down, and you got four guys, and they're running a TE, and James Harrison's coming around he's 2 feet off the ground as he's bending around on the TE, and I see him not slowing down, and I'm like, do I go hard? Do I not go? Well, I don't know what to do right now. I'm in no man's land. I don't know what to do.
Well, because you're on practice squad too, you're trying to get up to the active roster, and I think the coaches on that staff might even be as star-studded as the roster. That you're trying to impress guys like Mike Tomlin. Bruce Arians was on that staff, right? He was offensive coordinator at the time. Yep. And I wanted to highlight that because later on in the show, we'll come back to Bruce Arians. You guys kind of intertwined from that point forward for the rest of your career.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, like in Bruce's eyes, and if you had Bruce on here, I mean, he'd tell the same story. Yeah, I think he saw talent in me, and I think he saw something in me, but like my rookie year, I mean, like I said, I'm getting pulled in different directions. I'm going out, I'm coming in, I'm not taking it 100% serious because I'm on the practice squad, and I'm like, man, like no matter what I do, like this group is loaded, like I'm not getting pulled up, right? And so I was just kind of living, and I was going to work, but I wasn't working, if that makes sense, right? Like I wasn't fully like in, right? And so fast forward a couple of years, and he gets the head job or the offensive coordinator job in Indy, and Ryan Grigson. So that everything's, everything's intertwined, right? Like you're always, somebody knows somebody, or you know somebody, and that's just kind of the way the NFL works. So like I said, I went to Philadelphia after Pittsburgh. I go out there, they got a guy on the scouting staff, Ryan Grigson, who was director of something personnel, and he ends up getting the GM job out in Indianapolis whenever I kind of got my break, right? And so he signs me to Indianapolis in 2012, hires Chuck Pagano. I have no connection to Chuck Pagano, but Chuck hires Bruce Arians. They coached together in Cleveland back in 2001. Boom, we got our offensive coordinator. He hires Harold Goodwin. Harold Goodwin was my assistant O-line coach in Pittsburgh with Bruce Arians. Both of them, I think, were like, man, this guy's falling asleep in meetings. This dipshit, he's out getting drunk on the Tuesday night. Like what, like whatever, right? And then I remember fast forward a year into that or whatever. I don't know, maybe mid-November, and we're at an event with Bruce in downtown Indianapolis, and he was like, man, like when they signed you, I said, man, we signed that dumbass. No way, no way, right? So he's like, man, I'm so proud of you though, because like the transition that I saw from you as a rookie till now, he's like, it's tenfold. You are a pro now. Let's go. And I was like, okay, here we go.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, you go from the Steelers to the Eagles then to the Colts, right?
Yep.
And that's kind of where things started. I guess Philly was where that transition really took place, because Philly had an unbelievable squad at that time too. And you learned from some greats in Philly.
Yeah.
And so you go Colts, Ravens, back to the Colts. But the Cardinals, where you and I played together, was really where you kind of took the next step, right? I mean, that's when you kind of solidified yourself, and you're like, hey, we're here, we're arriving. And that's another Bruce Arians connection, right?
That's right. Yeah. So same thing, right? So it was Indy that kind of gave me my start, right? So Pittsburgh, obviously, it all goes back to Bruce, right? And then I go to Indy. Obviously, really now this is where Bruce really starts to see what I can bring to the table, right? And then right after that first year, I was like, oh man, because the first year in Indy was whenever like things started to click. I'm rolling as the starting center. most of the year. Andrew Luck, we just drafted as a rookie. He's on his way to the top of the mountain, right? And we got a good team and Reggie Wayne and all these guys. And so Bruce ends up taking over that same year. Chuck Pagano gets diagnosed with cancer, right? So he leaves the team to be in the hospital and kind of handle his treatments there for a while. And during that time, Bruce takes over as head coach. We reel off 8 wins in a row and we're rolling. So I don't know if you remember that, but that year, Bruce wasn't even the head coach, but he gets named NFL Coach of the Year. And now his name's up for every head coaching job, right? So he ends up getting the Cardinals job in 2013, but I'm stuck under contract in Indianapolis. And like just when things were like kind of rolling my way, right? Like he's out. And so then they bring in a new staff and like within, and now I was in kind of like a little center battle because I wasn't the starter when I went to Indy, but we had drafted a guy, but brought in a guy in free agency, Samson Satelli. Good center, played in the league for a long time, but we're kind of battling out. And I think towards the end of that first year, I kind of started to rise here and they started to see like, oh, we're paying this guy this, but this guy maybe was here. So we don't want that. So that's when I got traded to Baltimore and all these things, like looking back.
How's that call go? I mean, like you're just getting your footing. You just had this unbelievable season. You got this. The one thing that helps a center tremendously is when you have a quarterback that you know you can trust. You got this guy, Andrew Luck, who ended up being pretty damn good. And then all of a sudden they give you a call and like, hey, we're trading you.
Yeah, it was brutal. Like and it happened so fast. It was like, I'm not kidding you. I got a text message at like, I woke up to go in for like an off-season workout. We normally wake up 7:00 for an 8:00 start, 6:30 for an 8:00 start, whatever. I mean, I lived 5 minutes from the facility, so boom, I'm right over. But I wake up, I think it was like 6:45, and I look at my phone. And it was Ryan Grigson, the GM, and he was like, "Hey, come see me when you get here." I'm like, "All right." I don't know what this is about. I have no idea. Like trade was.
You're thinking extension probably, right?
Yeah. If I thought 100 things, trade wasn't even in the top 100, right? And so I walk into his office, it's him and Chuck, and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna trade you to Baltimore. We got a good deal in place. You're gonna go there." Ozzie Newsome's, who I think is the best general manager in the National Football League, and he loves what you can do, and they want to bring you in. They need some help on the interior offensive line, and you can go there and, whatever. And I'm like, I can't even like fathom this. I'm like, man, like just when I thought I was like putting roots in the ground, right? So I go over there and like all these things, when I look back on my career, like all these things like were huge in my development. They were huge and instrumental, like where my career like eventually went to. Because the 1 year in Baltimore was huge. So I go there in 2013 and I'm kind of in a battle, like in the interior 3. They got obviously the starting right guard's Marshall Yonda. Like you are not supplanting him. He's a first ballot Hall of Fame guy. Like, okay, so now we got center left guard. They got Kelechi Osemele at left guard, who at the time he was a rookie, but nobody knew who he was at that point. Well, then I got to watch him in practice, and the guy's pretty damn good and one of the most powerful humans I've ever seen. So then there's Gino Gradkowski at center. So him and I get into a battle at center. They end up rolling with him to start the year, but then Kelechi hurts his back. So he's out. So I start most of the season at left guard. It's all 6'1" and 29-inch arms over here, right? And so, but it was huge because that was the first year where you started to see Chandler Jones, James Harrison, like those types all lining up over the guards. It was the stand-up defensive end standing up over the tackles on third down, and I'm blocking Julius Peppers, James Harris, and Chandler Jones in back-to-back weeks, right? And it's like, okay, like his arms being 29-inch arms, he still uses them. He still blocks people. Like it didn't hinder him, right? So that was huge for me going forward, no matter what was going to happen, because now they looked at me like, okay, he can play center and guard. Like at first it was like, he's a center only. So like, if he's not the starting center, do we even have a roster spot for him, right? And so then just when I think things are going good, right? Jim Caldwell is, I think, I don't know where he went as a head coach maybe. And, Detroit. He got the head coach of Detroit. Yeah. And so we need a new offensive coordinator. So we bring in Gary Kubiak, comes from the Shanahan world and like all zone scheme. I'm not built for zone. So I'm like, here we go. So I end up getting cut at the end of training camp while Indy needed a center at that point. So they claimed me back off of the thing. So I go from Colts starting, traded to Ravens starting, cut Ravens, back to Indy claimed, and week 1 they call me. They're like, "Hey, study on the thing because you're starting." We played Thursday night opening or Sunday night football first week out at Denver. They're like, "You're starting week 1, so get rolling on the playbook." And it was a different playbook because the playbook I had previously was Bruce Arians. Right now it's Pep Hamilton, who great coach as well, but Andrew Luck had him in Stanford, so it was more of like a college-based thing. So I go there and then started, like half the year there, and then my contract was up there, and then get a call from Bruce Arians out in Arizona, and then come on out here, buddy.
Yeah, I feel like your career has just been you almost play like a defensive lineman, the aggressive style in which you play. It's like, hey, I'm gonna go out here and compete. So put me out here at guard. Does arm length even matter? I mean, people make me and you are both red flagged for arm length over a decade in the NFL, each of us. And it's like, is that something that when you look at guys right now, it makes we just broke down some O linemen and some D linemen. Are you drafting a guy just because he has an inch longer arm?
Listen, it's the biggest bunch of bullshit I've ever been a part of in my entire life. And the problem is you get these, I get it, right? Like I think upstairs, it's easier to justify the pick when the guy fits the mold, right? And I think if it's between the mold guy and the non-mold guy, for this guy, and you stand on the table for the non-mold guy and he doesn't pan out, then it's your ass that's on the chopping block, right? And so I think that's where this whole thing kind of came about. But it's like who's the Skoronsky, right? Like he's the kid that came out of Northwestern last year, and he was all-world left tackle. Everybody talks about he blocked the shit out of Chase Young. He blocked the shit out of all these guys in the Big Ten week after week after week after week, but all of a sudden those same guys are going to be in the NFL next year and he won't be able to block them. Oh, because you took him to Indianapolis and measured his arms were 2 inches too short? Fuck out of here, right? So that's my biggest gripe with the whole thing. And same thing is going on with a lot of guys this year, right? Like you're going to look at some guys and you're going to be like, oh, like Troy Fatana, right? Like we love this kid in the draft. We love this kid in the way he plays from Washington, but it's like, oh, well, he's getting a lot of knock because his arms aren't that long and he's only 6'4" or whatever it is. And it's like, it's the biggest bunch of bullshit. If you can play, you can play. Watch the film. And most of the guys, if you're playing at a Power 5 school, most of these guys you're playing against, you're going to be playing against the same guys at the next level. So if you blocked them then, you can block them there, right? And so that's the way I kind of look at it. Now, I think tackle might be a little bit of a different story, right? Like they like the length on the edge, but I think interior, it's a bar fight, play after play for 65 plays, and who's going to come out on top is probably going to be the tougher, more physical guy. Period.
And it goes back to what you said earlier. It's like, hey, if you go out there and you're battling against this guy, you don't know his name, you don't know where he's from, you don't know his arm length. Now all of a sudden it's like, hey, let's go out there and battle. This is schoolyard. This is like we go outside and we find out who's tougher. And that's where you start bringing in arm length, how many bench reps he does. This guy ran, because some guy might run a 4.4, but then the 4.4 guy plays like a 4.6 guy, and the 4.6 guy runs like a 4.4 guy. So it's all the bullshit, and you've seen it all. That's the beauty of it all. I mean, you go to Arizona, that's kind of where the career. You found some stability there. Is that kind of where you finally get a chance to really, plant your roots there?
Yeah, that's right. So I go out there in 2015, and it was the first time really of any of my stops where I stayed longer than really 2-3 years, right? And so I end up coming out here, and I'm out here from 2015 till the end of the 19 season when you and I played together, and it's yeah, it was funny to me too, though, because it's the same thing. I battled perception my whole career, and that's what people don't realize, right? Like if you're drafted in the first round, if you're drafted in the top 10, you're going to get 15 opportunities, right? If you're drafted in the first round, you're going to get 10, right? And so as you start to go down the line, right, if there's a team that doesn't necessarily see you as a fit and you are a 4th rounder, well, you might only get 1 or 2 more opportunities, right? And so for me, like battling perception was always that. It was always like, oh yeah, like he had a great year, but he's still got 29-inch arms. He's still 6'1". He still has a big stomach and whatever it may be, right? And so, I even in the 4 years I was here, they drafted 2 centers to replace me, and I just kept like I just kept stacking chips on my shoulder, right? Like it was just like bang, bang, bang. What more can we do I just need just 1 ounce of motivation to prove somebody wrong. And that was kind of it. And so, I ended up starting a bunch of games here, and, I didn't miss a snap 2016, 2017, started every snap, 2016, 2017, 2018. You and I think we're going to be playing next to each other, and boom, I tear my ACL in the first week of training camp. Now it's like, what are they going to do now? And this was my contract year. They ended up re-signing me to a 1-year deal, which was in great faith by the Cardinals. And it was awesome. Little thing, gave me an opportunity to make some money back if I ended up becoming the starter. And by second week of training camp the following year, I'm back next to you. And it was a lot of fun. And then, I play out that year. We have a lot of fun playing out that year. And then another connection with Bruce Arians. He gets the job after retiring back down in Tampa and brings me down to Tampa and ultimately culminate with the Super Bowl.
You and Ray Lewis, man. I mean, you and Ray Lewis just capping off the careers with Super Bowls, walking off into the sunset. Now, I just want to rewind. Like, you talk about the Ravens, the Colts, the Steelers, the Eagles. Like, you played with some dogs, first ballot Hall of Famers. I mean, the laundry list of names you mentioned, you look at the Cardinals, they had Carson Palmer, they had Larry Fitzgerald, they had the list goes on and on. You end up having some coaches that played on the first team you were with. I know, like Larry Foote, and some of those guys end up being coaches of yours. What are some of the things you took away from those elite players throughout your career after seeing it and doing it for so many? Obviously you have the greatest of all time in Tom Brady. What were some of those things you took from them throughout their careers that you molded into your game or to your life off the field?
Yeah, so just from so many different things from so many different guys, it's going to be so hard to put this all into words, right? But for me, I walk in as a rookie in Pittsburgh, and you got probably 6 Hall of Famers in that locker room, right? Offensive and defensive, right? So you look at the defensive side, you probably got, Polamalu, James Harrison, and like Lamar Woodley, he was kind of on a trajectory to be that at that point, right? And then there's other guys. Then on the offensive side, you had Santonio Holmes, you had Hines Ward, you had Ben Roethlisberger, you had Willie Parker had a good run at running back. I mean, you had so many guys. Heath Miller could be a Hall of Famer at some point, right? Like, so all I tried to do was just watch, right? I just wanted to watch. What are they doing? What's their routine? What time do they get here in the morning? What time do they leave? What are they doing between? And one thing that always stuck out in my mind, James Harrison, I never seen a guy do more cardio in my life. Like, he was, as soon as practice was over, he was back in on the stair climber, the elliptical, getting an extra 30 minutes in. Like those little things stick out in my mind. And I was like, man, like, this is watching Troy Polamalu, and he was working with Alex Guerrero, who ends up being Tom Brady's guy at that time. So he's doing all this crazy band stuff, and he's pulling his leg up over, he's pulling it here, he's doing all this different band crazy stuff, and it's so unconventional from everything that we've been taught in the weight room. Like, so you take those little things, right? And then I go to Philadelphia, and I get to learn from Jason Peters. I get to watch him daily in practice every day. Who's arguably the best left tackle ever to play the game, right? He's definitely going to be a Hall of Famer. I get to watch that. I get to watch Michael Vick. I get to watch and pick some of these guys' brain. Deshaun Jackson, right? And, so many of these guys. Todd Harriman was a great little guy for me. Great guy, little. So he's 6'7", 330 pounds. Great guy for me to kind of pick his brain as a young player as well. And then I go to Indianapolis, and you got Reggie Wayne, you got Andrew Luck, you got Antoine Bethea, you got Dwight Freeney, Robert Mathis, right? Like, you got all these guys and so you just pick little things, and some of it's how they carry themselves in the locker room. Some of it's how they operate, and take care of their body. Some of it's how they practice. Some of it's all these things, right? And so then you go to Baltimore, right? And you got Marshall Yonda, you got Terrell Suggs, you got Haloti Ngata. These guys are all Hall of Fame guys, right? You got Ray Rice when he was killing it, and you got And
was Ray Lewis on that team at that time, or was he?
No, so I missed Ray. Gotcha. By a year, but I mean, I'm trying to think. Jameel McClain. I'm trying to think who else.
Yeah,
they had some good linebackers. Their defensive line. Oh, Chris Canty, Marcus Spears. I mean, they were guys, right? And Jimmy Smith was DB, and I missed Ed Reed as well. I forget where he went after that, but yeah, it was just guys everywhere, right? And then you go to Arizona, and you got Carson and Larry. You get to watch those guys, right? And then you get to watch We actually brought Dwight Freeney in 2015 for our playoff run. We brought Jason Babin in, who also was with me in Philly.
Yeah.
A heck of a run as a D lineman, right? And then you get to go to Tampa, right? And you see where it all changes, right? And this is where it all changed for me, just seeing everything, because you hear so many of these stories and they're almost like folklores about Tom Brady, right? But it's true. Like I watched, and here's why he made everyone around him better, is because he held everybody accountable, and because he was the greatest of all time, and his ability to see success and want success more than anything else in life is the fact that you didn't want to let him down. That's why he made everyone better, right? Like everybody wanted to do everything right because they knew how much it meant to him. Therefore, it meant that much to you. Therefore, it meant that much to the team, right? And one thing that I'll always remember too, and I think I told you this or I called you right whenever I first got down there, him and Gronk practice harder than anybody else I've ever seen in my entire life playing football. So I was like, I remember watching Gronk just catch like a 12-yard pass, him turn upfield and sprint for like 30 more yards. And I'm like, just hit it, like the way and how fast and how hard he ran that route in a October practice in Tampa, when it really means nothing on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and watched him finish the drill. I'm like, oh, that's why they won 6, right? Like that's why they did it up there, right? And so there's so many of those little stories you just kind of just take like bits and pieces. And so now, like training some guys, I just start trying to like infiltrate little things here and there, little nuggets.
I'm sure there's things subconscious that you just absorb throughout the years of like seeing the greatness. I mean, I'm just trying to keep track of all the names. I mean, you've probably played with 20 Hall of Famers. That's one of the most impressive things to get to be around those guys and kind of carry that in your everyday life. When you are in Tampa and you're playing with a guy like Tom Brady, obviously he's the greatest. There's so many different things you can say about it. Did he ever do anything outside of football, like business of sport wise? Is he talking about deals that he's doing or any? I don't know. In Pittsburgh early on, I know in New York when I first got there, no one talked about anything but football. Was there any point? I know Larry Fitz was a guy that we both were around that talked about investments he was making. When did you start seeing that transition in the locker room?
Yeah, I think as a young guy, you're just not even privy to those conversations, right? Like they're not bringing you in on those conversations, right? True. But I think as you get a little older and you start to, now you're sitting in the back of the bus with the older guys, the cool kids, right? And it's like, oh, okay, like you just start bullshitting on a bus ride, to the hotel, or a bus ride to the game, or whatever it may be, or it might be a plane ride, it might be whatever, right? And so everybody they're like, oh yeah, I threw some money in this, and you start hearing some different things. And Tom was pretty private, like with anything like really outside of it. I mean, I don't think he was really like looping a bunch of guys in. I think he's gotten pretty busy, obviously. Yeah, exactly. There's levels to this, right? But I mean, yeah, it's just you start hearing some different things. It's like, oh, okay, like, well, if there's any opportunities, like, I'm willing to throw something in, so let me know, and then you start like hopping in on some different conversations like that. But it's more so that, and for me, I always felt they were trying to get rid of me. Like that's the way that I always like approached my career. They were always trying to find somebody to replace me or get me out of the building. So like I felt like I had to put 100% focus into everything I was doing on the football field while I was playing football in order for me to stay in there. Because I felt like if my focus veered this way just a little bit, and now I'm not putting 100% into this, that's their avenue to get me in. So for me, I didn't start hopping into anything very much until after I was done. But I think, I mean, there's so many guys that are able to kind of navigate those waters.
Well, yeah, I know you're working with a guy now that has done that very successfully. But just before we hop into life after football, you go down to Tampa Bay. You finish up a great career with the Cardinals. Go down to Tampa Bay, back with Bruce Arians. You got Tom Brady. You got Gronk. The defense is unbelievable. And you guys win a Super Bowl. And I think no one besides... No, everyone thought you guys had a chance, but everyone's like, could it happen this quickly? Could Tom Brady really go down to Tampa with a new coach and a new system and really go win a Super Bowl? And you guys did it. What was it like winning a Super Bowl in your last year playing?
It's the pinnacle, right? That's what you do it for. And for me, it was so bittersweet. Obviously, I'll dive into this injury, but it's for me, like it was, I knew we had a chance when I got down there, and then things weren't going great. We were 7-5 going into our bye week, 7-4, 7-5, something like that. And I was like, man, we got so much talent. Like you speak about Hall of Famers, like, I mean, it's just like across the board. I mean, Vita's got a chance at some point, right? We had Shaq Barrett, we had Jason Pierre-Paul, we had Ndamukong Suh. You got all Levante David, who's got a chance, right? Devin White, who just signed a big deal in Philly, right? And then all the guys obviously on offense, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans will be a first ballot, right? Gronk,
100%.
you know, Tom, Leonard Fournette. We had as good an offensive line from left to right as I was ever a part of. I mean, there was money thrown at it. I mean, every one of those guys were making 10 million plus, except for Alex Kappa. And oh, by the way, he signed for 10 million plus the next year. And so, I mean, just across the board, we had so much talent. And, you know, we go into that bye week, it's like, man, what is going on? And then we come out of the bye week and we reel off 8 straight and obviously hoisted at the end, which was the best. But before the bye week, so I went down there with Bruce, and the reason I got the call to go down there was like, hey, listen, like we don't have a ton of depth. I want you to come down here. You know the system. You're great in the locker room. The guys will love you, and you can help some guys out. And then, if we do need you, I trust you. I know you'll go in and you'll be able to play well. And so I ended up getting 3 starts in the middle of that run, and it was Carolina, maybe New Orleans, and then LA Rams on Monday Night Football. And Carolina has a rookie defensive tackle, Derek Brown, who you know pretty well, and just turned out to be a damn good football player. Luckily, I got him when he was raw and still kind of inexperienced, and we ran for 280 yards and had a really good day at the office that day. So I felt good. I was like, oh, I can still play this game, even though I'm 35 and getting old, blah, 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 blah. And then we got smoked against New Orleans at home, and then we played the Rams. We ended up losing to them, I think, by 6 or 7 on Monday Night Football. But going into the final drive of that game is whenever I go to do a routine, you know, kind of hold off a guy and then go take a shot. And it was going to take a shot, and Aaron Donald kind of clipped me from the backside right before I made contact with Michael Brockers, and boom, I just lose, feeling neck down. I'm like, oh, it was about the scariest 30 seconds of my life. And then came back. We end up losing the game and go through the MRI process, and, you know, hey, listen, you can't play football anymore. So it's like very much like my whole career was. It was like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But like also the way that I've kind of been able to deal with that all mentally, like during my whole life, career wise, was like, okay, like how can I need to get something. I need to get back into something and figure something out so that my mind isn't just dwelling on this injury, right? So I start losing some weight. I hop in on like some of the coaches' meetings. I figure out how I can help in the game plans. And so I like hopped in kind of like helping out coaching as that thing goes, and still be a part of this thing as we roll forward, and obviously get to hoist it at the end. And then that parlayed right into a coaching job.
What was that like, you know, being the highest of highs and then all of a sudden being told, hey, football is done. You can't go, despite how you may feel right now and like where you're at in your career, because none of us really get to dictate when we say bye to the game. Typically, it's either a coach or a doctor telling us. How did you deal with that? I mean, you talked about diving into the coaching. Is that goes back to Bruce Arians knowing who you are, knowing what type of competitor you are to allow you? Because I've been hurt before and they didn't ask me to come in and coach. So how did that all come together?
Yeah, it was wild. I mean, honestly, like it was, I go to the MRI appointment, and the head trainer's like, hey, let me ride over with you. And I'm like, this ain't fucking good. So,
it's like the Greg said, hey, I need you to come into
the
facility.
I'm like, all right, I see the writing. This can't be very good. Head trainer's never gone with me to an MRI in my life, right? It's like, go get your MRI and bring me the results back. So as soon as I walked in, doctors they don't have very much bedside manner, right? So he's like, see this thing right here? Yeah, you can't play football anymore. It was like within 10 seconds. And it was like, I took about 40 hours where I was like contemplating a lot of things, like not that, right? But just in terms of, I mean, just so many thoughts going through your head. Like, this is the only thing I've known. And then boom, like just taken away, ripped out from underneath you like in a second. I felt bad for my wife. She handled it pretty well, but I talked to you. I mean, I got so many cool calls from you and, some of the former players and coaches. But yeah, it was the same thing, right? Like then I show up the next day and it's like, no, I can't play anymore. And what can I do to help? And then Goody was like, you should go talk to BA. So I talked to BA and he was like, hop on the cart with me. He was driving his little golf cart around. He was like, hop on. He was like, dude, I've always said, I think you're gonna be a great coach someday. He's like, why don't we start this thing early? He's like, start hopping in on the meetings with Goody and Joe and help them game plan. You see something, give them a fresh set of eyes, like give them that perspective from a player. Because a lot of us sit here and we think things sound great on paper, but can we ask the player to do it? We don't know until we actually put the player in that situation. You've been in that situation. You can kind of give that feedback and input. And then what was cool then was Tom started leaning on me a little bit in the run game. Like, hey, like, I like this, and this. How do we get to this? And different things like that. And so then I started kind of getting a little bit more involved in that and just doing some of the things like there. And then I remember we played Buffalo that year and I was like, hey, like we should put this play in. We should, we should go 1 by 3 into the boundary. They'll send the corner over. They'll only have one support player over here. Let's run this like G scheme to the right. And it goes for 50 and a touchdown. I'm like, hey, I might know what I'm talking about. This is kind of cool. And so we kind of, I looked forward to it. I mean, I did. It was my way to stay involved and active and engaged in the game without feeling like I was dwelling on anything else. And then also it kept me, in and around the boys and in and around the facility. And now I started diving into the workout thing. And as you know, like, I mean, I lost 60 pounds in 12 weeks and it was like, here we go. So it was just really good for my mental and it was really good for me to kind of get an early glimpse as to if I did want to do this. And I did feel like I did want to do that.
And that's the one thing I think you and I both have seen. A lot of our teammates and brothers have gone through it, the transition out and the being told it's done, not knowing what to do next, not having that purpose. So like kudos to you, kudos to BA for bringing you in and knowing what type of guy you are to get you into coaching. So you win the Super Bowl, you start coaching, you're like, all right, I'm diving full bore into coaching. I remember you calling me like, hey, I'm moving down to Tampa, coaching full time. How did your first year of coaching go in Tampa? You just won the Super Bowl. It's like you're up here, you're riding on cloud 9.
The funny thing is like, you always have these exit meetings, right? And you meet as a group and then you meet as a person, as an individual with the coach, like as the season ends. Well, this is the first time I've ever been a part of an exit meeting after winning a Super Bowl. So it was pretty relaxed. It was pretty low key. Everybody's fired up. We're actually getting ready to go to the boat parade is whenever the morning that we did the exit meetings. It was like, hey, everybody just get together with your position group and your coach is going to talk to you, say a few words. And if you do want an individual, maybe we'll get together in a month after we come off this bender. Right. And that was kind of,
were you guys drinking during these exit meetings? Like, hey, everyone's got beers in the hand.
It was common. I mean, we had everybody rolled in with, all that stuff. But I mean, we get to the thing. It's like, hey, like we got to figure you out. We got to figure you out. I know he wants you to coach. And like, that was like what happened in the exit meeting. And I was like, man. And at the same time, Antoine Randall had just got the head receivers coach job with Detroit. He was working as like an offensive assistant, basically the role that I ended up taking over.
Oh, gotcha.
So like that, the position was open. So I was like, oh, okay. And so then that year was also unique because it was still a COVID year, right? And so we didn't have to come back. There was no off season. Right? Like there was no off season. So we didn't have to come back until basically like mandatory mini camp. And then you left again and didn't have to come back for training camp. So like, if that was the way coaching was, I might be interested in this. Right.
Well, then it sucked for like the world, but for like players, it was like, all right, we have no OTAs. We don't have to be there in person as much. We're doing these virtual meetings and we get to go back and just kind of enjoy our families and let our bodies rest. So as bad as COVID was, and don't get me wrong, it made life as an NFL player a little bit easier, and a coach, obviously, because that's the most time consuming profession there.
That's right. Because they're normally right back at it. Right. And so I didn't have to do any of that stuff. So then I just basically show up for training camp, just like I do as a player. I'm like, oh, this isn't bad. Well, then the grind started. Right. And listen, I got a lot of respect for what they do. I can't justify that at this point in my career. I can't justify, not seeing my kids in the morning, waking up at 5:30 a.m. to go put together a game plan or go break down a pass protection tape for 2 hours with the OC and 3 other coaches that are involved in that, and then go do this and this and this, and squeeze a 45-minute workout in just to get back and break down some more stuff. And then we have a run game meeting to put together the run plan for the week and do this. And then by the time I look, it's 10 o'clock at night, and I didn't get to see my kids before I went to bed either. And then, by the way, I'm waking up at 5:30 again tomorrow, so I won't see them when I get up. And then maybe I'll see them tomorrow night. Who knows? But I just couldn't justify that at this point in my life with 3 kids under 5. And, so I get to that point and I'm like, coaching, we had a good team. We still had Tom Brady. We still had kind of the whole crew back in town, and we were trying to run it back. And we ended up losing to the Rams in the divisional round, which is a wild game. I don't know if you remember that. We were down by like 28 or something like that. And we come back and tied the game. And then we get them to 3rd down and they complete it. We went cover 0 against them. Stafford throws an unbelievable ball to Cooper Kupp, and they get it at our 20 or whatever and kick a field goal. And they end up obviously going to win the Super Bowl out in LA. But, coaching, it was fun. It was great to be around the boys. And I do, we'll obviously dive into what I'm doing now, but I enjoy the coaching side. I just didn't enjoy the hours. And that was the whole thing. If the coaching was a 7 to 5 job, I'd do it. And if I got that opportunity in Arizona, I would definitely do it. But, moving the family out of the roots of where I'm at now and, not being able to see them at very critical time in their lives, like I can't justify it.
Yeah, I think throughout my career, we've seen coaches going through it. They have terrible hours. I mean, the divorce rate in the country is already 50%, and then it's got to be 90% for NFL coaches because you never see your family, you never get to see your kids. You're traveling on weekends. We play on holidays. Like I remember this last year, I played on Christmas, so you don't get to spend any time. Luckily, my daughter wasn't born yet, but sacrificing all those things time and time again is one of the toughest things. So you spend that year coaching, and you're like, all right, fuck this. I can't do this. What happens next? How do we go from you're playing, you win a Super Bowl, you have this injury that sets you on a coaching career path. Now all of a sudden you're in media and you're on ESPN. It's like 2 years later, like you blink and all of a sudden you're on ESPN. Nobody makes that kind of transition that quickly. How did this all take place? Let's talk about where you're at now. I think this is one of the most interesting stories of your entire journey. I think it goes back to just never stopping, always having those teammates and always showing what type of man you are. It worked out so well. It's why you got right into coaching with BA. And then now you're with the Pat McAfee Show. How did that all work out?
Yeah. So the Pat McAfee Show, basically from September, it's basically from week 1 through the Super Bowl. So that's kind of how my contract works with him. And it's awesome. I'm so grateful for all the opportunities that he's given me, not only before all of this, like hopping on his show and, he's getting big time guests, left and right. And he's bringing, me on the show and talking, but that's where it all started. I got some good stories. I can tell a good story. I can make some people laugh. And I'm obviously smart enough as a center where I can talk ball pretty good too. And so, the whole thing started. So him and I, backstory on us, we played together in Indy in those years and obviously knew each other. We go way back even to coming out of college. He was up for the Ray Guy Award. I was up for the Remington. So we're at the College Football Awards show down in Orlando. Everybody gets in by curfew at the right time. Well, here comes these 2 stragglers from Pittsburgh, Penn State and West Virginia. We go out, we hit the town, we're drinking, we see Herb Street out, we're having a good time down on the boardwalk. We come back and it's like, maybe we should have gotten in a little earlier, but that's kind of where our relationship. And then fast forward a couple years later, and I'm his teammate, and our lockers are basically next to each other. And so we end up being in each other's weddings. I'm in his wedding, he's in my wedding, and then we just stayed super close friends all these years. And as time goes on, right now, my career is starting to kind of come to a close, and I'm watching. This is right when the breakdowns on social media were starting to climb, right? And Dan Orlovsky's posting all these videos, and I love Dan, and Dan and I talk all the time. And Pat obviously has Dan on all the time, the ESPN and all the good stuff. So there's no negative here, but I'm watching this, and Dan's blaming the offensive line every time there's a sack, and I'm like, hold the phone here. Oh,
That's what everyone does. All the media, all the coaches, everyone but the O lineman. It's kind of we got to defend ourselves. So I'm glad you're out there doing it.
that's right. So I called Pat up. I remember FaceTiming him. I'm like, hey, did you see fucking Orlovsky's breakdown? And he's like, what happened? I'm like, well, it's a clear slide protection to the will. O-line slides to the will. Mike comes here, back releases. Mike gets the sack. He's blaming the O-line. That's the back's fault. Back should have stayed in, blocked the Mike. I know that for a fact. He's like, would you want to come on the show and talk about that? And I'm like, yeah. And that's kind of where the whole thing started. So then as time got on, he was out here in Arizona. We went out and played golf and sat down. He's like, all right, I'm gonna send you a contract. He's like, I want you on the show. I need you in studio week 1 through the end. He's like, come in every week. You'll have full freedom to kind of go in there and find plays. He's like, you're going to watch a lot of film. It's going to be a grind. And I'm like, yeah, I don't mind that. And so I start doing it, and then we start putting together like a little segment. We call it In the Trenches on the Pat McAfee Show. And it's so much fun, man. It's so much fun for me to stay engaged, involved, and watch it, and then get together with the boys and just, the best show on earth, and, let everybody else just kind of hear us as we joke around and talk shit and talk ball and do the whole thing. And then I get my little 20 minutes at the end of the show to just really highlight and showcase offensive line play, which nobody's really doing. Maybe it's starting to climb a little bit more now, but it's an opportunity for me to highlight the big boys. And it also has parlayed into some success on the other thing that I do once the season's over, and that's train guys, getting ready for the season. And that starts basically March, all the way through the season. And so I got a handful of guys that I train in the off season now, and that all kind of has worked hand in hand with one another. And it's so much fun for me. I have a blast doing it.
Well, it's funny how you said it. You're like the coaching hours in the NFL weren't for you, but you're kind of like the people's coach right now. You're coaching up the fans. You're coaching up. You still have guys that you're training. So like you still are an O-line coach, but you're just the O-line coach for the masses. Like, hey, I'm going to make you less stupid when it comes to offensive line play. I still got my first round pick from Arizona. What's his name? Let's give him a shout out real quick.
Yep, Jordan Morgan. He's got a great chance to be a first round pick this year. He's a stud. I mean, he's got a ton of talent. He's fluid. He's athletic. He's got all the tools to be a star in the NFL.
So you have him getting ready to go in the first round. You got a guy from the Patriots who you're working with. You have the show that you're working with, breaking down offensive line and kind of getting to show people what it's like to be in the trenches. So we don't just have to listen to these quarterbacks talk about offensive line play anymore.
Yep.
The fans love it. Do you have the best job on earth? Like for you, is there any other job you could have right now that would top this?
If I could have drawn it up exactly when I was done playing what I wanted to do, it would be, I don't think I could have drawn up a scenario quite as good as what I got right now. Like it's exactly what I want. It's a way to stay involved in the game. It's a way to talk about the game, still study the game, still learn the game as it continues to evolve, and then also work with my guy Hainsey, with my guy Vidarian Lowe from the Patriots. The time I spent with Jordan Morgan and the more guys that'll keep coming my way on the training, because it allows me to coach. It allows me to do that, but it allows me to do it on my time. It allows me to do it and still be my daughter's softball coach. It allows me to do it and still hear my 3-year-old come home from school and tell me stories that she's learning in school, and watch my almost 2-year-old boy, ride his scooter around the backyard, and all these things that I would have missed out on if I was coaching. And so for me, being able to do all the things that I love to do and enjoy doing on the football side of it, but on my time, is really cool. And then also, the opportunity to kind of showcase it on ESPN on the Pat McAfee Show is unbelievable. It really is. It's one of the most watched, if not the most watched show on ESPN. And, I've gotten so much advice of breaking on how to break down, right? Because you and I, to the average person, we could talk circles around somebody, but how do you do it in a way where we make the average fan understand it, where now they can go tell their buddy, hey, this is what a duo play is. Did you see that? The Patriots just ran duo for a touchdown because double team here, double team there. That's what we're doing. That's why it's called duo. And it's like, it makes the average fan feel smarter, just like fantasy did when fantasy football just came out, right? For the average woman or the average person who wasn't, maybe the most experienced football watcher, but it gives them something to be able to talk about it with.
What have you seen? Because when we first came into the league, if you would have told somebody I have a podcast or I'm talking about football and I'm talking to the media, it was taboo. It was like, hey, don't do that. Don't come around here with that bullshit. Now, this new age media, Pat's everywhere, ESPN's everywhere, you're everywhere. How have you seen that transition? What have you learned from Pat with this new age media, working with Twitter or X now? We got YouTube. How have you, seen that? Because you got to see Tom Brady, the greatest to ever do it on the football field. Now you're getting to see Pat, maybe the greatest to do it off the football field in terms of media. What have you taken from what he's been able to do in this new landscape?
He is the greatest to ever do it, and he's figured it out before everybody else. And that's what's so awesome to watch, right? What I've learned the most is the internet is king. That's what I've learned. I've learned the internet is king at this stage in our lives, and how you use it and what platform you use it and how you're able to continuously, just like as a player, right? Like Belichick's the greatest because he was able to evolve as all of these systems continue to change in the NFL, right? As social media platforms change, as YouTube is king versus, linear networks versus X, TikTok, Instagram, how you're able to utilize all of that and put it into the best way possible to your fans or your network is the new age. And Pat has done it better than most and better than all, in my opinion. And, I think for me to be able to see that and see the working operation, like when I show up there, like everybody just gets to see, it's just like, nobody realizes in a football game, like what goes on behind the scenes, what goes on in the meeting rooms, the practices, all that stuff. Everybody sees the 3-hour show and thinks like the boys are just showing. No, there's a lot of work going into that. There's a whole team in the back. There's a whole team obviously on stage. And then all those guys are putting in the work for the, not all, it might start the night before, but definitely the morning of, like those 4 or 5 hours isn't just sitting around bullshitting. It's putting together a top-notch show. And then, for me to be able to see that and, from a 5 feet away standpoint it's been invaluable.
What's more pressure? Hitting one of those shots or sinking one of the basketball shots in the Pat McAfee Show, or having to go out there and block a defensive lineman? Because there's like thousands of dollars on the line. We just did a golf thing with Underdog Fantasy and Colt McCoy, and as soon as they told us it was for money, I duffed the first shot. What's once more intimidating for you?
The interesting thing is like during a football game, after that first play, as well as I do, you don't feel the pressure. Like it's over. Like it could be the most pressure-packed situation in a football game. We're not feeling it, because it's not the first play, right? It might be the 63rd play. It might be the 78th play, whatever it is, right? And once you get that first play out of the way, it just becomes something we've done from the time we were little boys, right? And so that part of it is so interesting to me. The other crazy part of it is when I stand on a stage and I got to shoot a half-court shot, or I got to make 3 out of 5 putts on a little putting green in front of a camera. My mouth gets dry, my stomach's rolling. I'm like, what is happening right now? But yeah, it's so much fun. I had a good little run towards the end of the year where I was making a half quarter, a stage shot, almost every week, and making some money for some people. So that was really cool, actually.
I was seeing that. I was getting nervous for you. And I was just like, I don't know. I don't know how I would handle under pressure. I can go out there and block Aaron Donald all day, but hitting a half-court shot or just hitting a 3-foot putt, that's when you start shaking a little bit. Q, this is the last question I have for you. You've been through it all. You've seen the business of football. You've seen the ups. You've seen the downs. You've won a Super Bowl. You're now working with one of the best of all time in the media space. What's the advice to players out there as they transition out? And you kind of touched on it a few times, but if there was any advice you could give a guy right now that just was told, hey, your career is over, or they had that injury, or they got cut, what do you tell those guys?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is the first thing I would say is to build your brand, right? Like I was terrible at that as a player. And I think if I would have done that, obviously, I've lucked out in some certain things, right? But I think if I would have done that sooner, I think I could have had a lot more opportunities come my way a lot sooner, right? Because even now to this point, like I'm a small fish in the big pond when it comes to followers, on social media platforms. And I think while you're playing is the height at which you're gonna be for the most part. So if you can build that brand and gain that influencer status, right? As a player, like that's huge. It's so huge, and it makes so many things easy as we go down the line. But I think the biggest thing is no matter what you do, like you're going to get a shit sandwich at some point, whether it's from the NFL or whether it's, post career and you're trying some new things and they tell you that, hey, this isn't going to work out, or you think you got this business and then boom, that doesn't work out, or you think you're lost, and you probably are, because most people, when they're done and they've done something the same way for so many years, because that's what we are, we're creatures of habit, right? And when that all happens, you can't dwell. You cannot dwell for very long. So many people dwell and they sit there, and it's like, before long, 2 years has passed and you haven't done anything about it. And it's like, you don't have time. We don't have time. Like, we do not have time to sit there and dwell and look back on this or think of this or whatever it may be, right? So whatever it is, when you're done, find something, give it a go. And it may not be easy from the get-go, but stick with it, and give it enough time to bloom, to flourish, to whatever the word you want to use is, right? But you got to find and be all in. Like you can't throw, $1,000 and throw 500 in this, 500 in that, and think that, that either one of those are going to take off. Like you have to find what you're ready to do and be all in and be convicted in it and be, both feet in, jump, diving head first in. And that's the biggest thing I can give.
It's awesome, man. I think as guys experience this from where you started to where you're at now, the perseverance and continuing to work, man, I think it could benefit a lot of players out there. I think the fans are going to love the story. They get to see you on every Wednesday on ESPN during the football season, right?
During the football season, every Wednesday. Yep. And it's, I'm on the whole show, but then my little segments at the end, and it's just a blast. It's come and learn a little bit about what the big boys do. Because Jim Harbaugh, I got to say this. Jim Harbaugh said something at the owners' meetings last week. I don't know if you saw this. It was one of my favorite quotes. He was like, "If you're building a team, you want to build it around the O-line. Why is that?" And he said, "Because it's the only position group on the team where they don't depend on anybody else to be good, but everybody else depends on them."
I love it. I'm gonna have to go get that Harbaugh clip. Where else can everyone follow you right now? What's your handles on social media and all that?
Yeah, so AQ Shipley, all one word, Instagram, Twitter, trying to figure out TikTok because I know this is the way we're going. I'm trying
exactly.
But it's at AQ Shipley everywhere. And yeah, I have a blast. I need to be on there more, but all the stuff I put on Twitter, most of the stuff at least is clips from the show during the year. So if you don't want to watch the full show, you can catch the clips on my social media.
All right, perfect. Everyone go subscribe to AQ. Go follow him. Make sure also you're subscribing to Net Worth. AQ did say if I get 1 million subscribers on my show, he'll let me come get coffee for him one day when he's working at Pat McAfee.
That's right.
Q, my brother, man, I appreciate you. This has been awesome. I'll probably see you by the end of the week. We'll probably be golfing. We're working on our golf game together, getting ready for the next member guest.
Always a pleasure, brother. You know it.